Our first lesson this day comes from Genesis chapter 45. Listen now as Joseph makes himself known to his brothers. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loud the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into slavery. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because I was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been famine in the land. For the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you for a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it is not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute.' You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about the honor accorded to me in Egypt, about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly." Then Joseph threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. And our gospel reading today comes from Luke, the 6th chapter. Hear these teachings of Jesus. "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to anyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do not do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is it to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expect to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. Give, and it'll be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. He also told them this parable. Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not fall into a pit? The student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like the teacher. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank that is in yours? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take that speck out of your eye," when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Here ends the gospel reading. So, how was your Valentine's Day on Monday? Did you get any cards? Maybe any candy or flowers? Did you go out on a romantic date? These are the typical things that people associate with Valentine's Day. This holiday where we're supposed to do something to show affection to our loved ones. Now, it's kind of an easy holiday to celebrate. Just give and do things to those that you love, those that you're close to. Now, today, Jesus challenges us to love not just the people that we're close to, but people who are our enemies. People who we wouldn't think of maybe even giving, we never think to give Valentine's to or anything like that. No, Jesus says today, if you love those who love you, what credit is it to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is it to you? Even sinners do that. Yes, we are to have a greater love, a powerful love, a grand love, a love that, of course, comes from Jesus. That is our challenge this day, to love beyond the easy, the typical. The love that the world says is that's what love is. No, we're supposed to love with a grand love, a powerful love. That is the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus we try to reflect throughout our lives. Now, this great love, especially all that Jesus says today, it's hard. That's why I often say that Christianity is the hardest religion to follow. Because, see, in other religions and even philosophies and different ways and groups in the world, the idea is that you love those who love you. You love the people that are a part of the group, the particular tribe or religion. Those people who are outside the group, well, they don't need love or mercy. Those who are not part of the group, they're the worst of creatures. But Christianity, the way of Jesus, is a way of love. A love that pushes us beyond ourselves. A love that calls us to love enemies. It's a huge thing, this love, this greater love. Think what the world would be like if people followed this love and put it into practice. Would you see the problems in this world today if people lived this great love? Would there be such violence in the streets of America, in the towns and cities? Shootings, stabbings, beatings. Would there be wars or even the specter of war? Would families, friends, or communities be split and at each other? Would there be people who are lonely? People who feel they never belong? No. All these things and more. All these things and more would not be. Because the way of Jesus is far, far different from the ways of this world. The way of Jesus is a love that challenges us, pushes us beyond ourselves, pushes us to truly love, even those we don't like. Now, I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, there was something that happened every Valentine's Day, around Valentine's Day. We make these little pouches, like little pouches, usually out of construction paper, that would hold Valentine's Day cards. And of course, you put these on, say, like, you just stick them to the front of your desk. Anybody ever do that in school? You make like little pouches, and then Valentine's Day cards would be put.
We make shoe boxes.
Oh, you made shoe boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, you get shoe boxes. That's neat. Well, it's the same concept of you had this little thing where you could put cards for each other. Now, I'm sure you remember, or know right now, of course, that there's some people in your class that you don't like so much. There's the kid that is kind of annoying. There's the kid that actively tries to be your enemy. And then, of course, here's the kid that, it's not popular to interact with. Putting a Valentine's Day card, a very simple action, can be a challenge. A challenge when you don't care or love. I remember being young and thinking to myself, why should I put Valentine's Day card in some of these people's pouches? Because, of course, I didn't much care for them. But ultimately I did, because I understood it's the right thing to do. It's a nice little gesture to show that they were cared for. They were loved on this holiday. We must push ourselves to love, to get over our feelings and those thoughts that say we can't love somebody because of what they've done to us, or something that, this kind of annoy us, or something that just the world says, don't love that person. We have to push ourselves beyond the typical, to truly, truly love. Can you do that? Can you truly, truly love when there's people who around you don't always treat you the best? Can you love people? Like, say, for instance, can you love, say, family members who treat you as an outcast? Can you, say, love family members who, say, might have beat you up? Or, say, a family member that sold you into slavery? Could you love them? Well, today, in our lesson from Genesis 45, we, of course, meet a man who had all that happen to him, Joseph. Now, the story of Joseph, found in Genesis chapters 37 through 50, is a long and winding tale. You have Joseph, who, when he's much younger, has dreams, and there's kind of an arrogance there, and his brothers, they don't like him. And then, of course, what happens, as I described, Joseph, he gets beaten up and then sold into slavery. His brothers leave him to just be a slave, and that's it. Well, what happens with Joseph, he goes to Egypt, and as I said, it's a long and winding tale that you can, of course, read about in the Bible, where Joseph, as a slave, is blessed because he can interpret dreams. God gives him that gift. And he's also blessed with good leadership skills, management skills, and eventually Joseph becomes the second most powerful person in the land of Egypt. This is what happens when we read our lesson today. You see, Joseph, he's in charge of all of the grain and, of course, keeping it for doling it out during this time of famine. And his brothers, they come to the region, of course, looking for grain. And Joseph sees them. He sees them, and, of course, he wants to meet with his brothers. He wants to meet with his brothers and be reconciled, to show love. Now, Joseph, of course, being as powerful as he was, he could have not showed love. Because think about it. Like I said, Joseph is powerful. He's a man who's in charge of the food stores of an entire nation. His brothers coming in, what could have Joseph done with his power? He could easily have had his brothers arrested, could have had them sold into slavery. He could have done much worse. But what does Joseph choose to do? He chooses to meet with his brothers who did a terrible thing to him, and reconcile, to live in love, to show forgiveness. Now, of course, why does Joseph do that? Why does Joseph do that to his brothers that he could have ignored or punished? Why? Because Joseph has a God focus. A God focus that knows the way that God wants people to have reconciled families. Families that live in his great love. And Joseph also knows how God planned things out. How there's a certain course and ways of goodness that happen, even through bad things. Joseph looked to that greater love of God, the way that God molds this world and molds peoples and families. That love. Can you have that love in your life? Can you live that love? That is our grand challenge as people of God. We must be a people who do that, live that love, because by our example, as people who love, the world is a much better place. Instead of division and anger and hatred, there is peace and goodness. People who have needs, the greatest needs, are met because we love as Jesus commands. In the early 4th century, there was a plague that broke out in the city of Caesarea in Palestine. And this was a deadly plague. They're not, of course, sure what exactly it was, what we call modern diseases, but chances are it might have been an outbreak of smallpox or some other plague like that happened throughout the ages. Well, during this plague, people, of course, were scared. People left the city of Caesarea, leaving those who were ill to fend for themselves. Now, there was a population of people that decided that they need to stay. They need to stay during this deadly plague and take care of those who are abandoned, those who are very, very ill. And this group of people were the Christians. Now, the historian Eusebius, who lived in the city, he writes about this. He writes about the action of the Christians, and he wrote, "All day long, some of them, as the Christians, tended to the dying and to the burial, countless numbers, with no one to care for them. Others gathered together from all parts of the city, a multitude of those withered from famine, and distributed bread to them all." And Eusebius also wrote about the Christians. "Their deeds were on everyone's lips, and they glorified the God of the Christians. Such actions convinced them that they alone were pious and truly reverent to God." That love, that compassion, that was a light to the city of Caesarea so long ago. That love was a light that inspired others to know that, yeah, this great love, this love of Jesus these Christians are talking about, is true. And it is something that is good for all people. By our love, we set an example, a shining example. By our love, people live. We are just like our ancestors long ago in that city. Can you love? Can you love just like them, who really push themselves to care for those who are strangers, those who were even their enemies? That is our challenge, to love those who are our enemies. In January 1956, 5 missionaries were killed along the Uaguno River in Ecuador. These 5 missionaries, Jim Elliot, Pete Fleming, Ed McCauley, Nate Saint, and Roger Iderben, had landed in a plane along a sandy strip along the river. And they were there to preach the gospel to the Huaorani people. Now, the Huaorani people had kind of resisted encroachment into their territory. But these 5 missionaries, they thought that because they had some contact with the Huaorani a couple months previous, they thought they could preach the gospel to them. Well, they were attacked. They were attacked by a raiding party led by a man named Gita Uwe. Now, around the time that this happened, when the 5 missionaries died, a woman by the name of Diemna had left the Huaorani tribe because the Huaorani tribe had endemic violence. So she stayed with a neighboring tribe of people, and there she learned about Jesus. She learned about the gospel. And Diemna, she had invited some people to help be missionaries to her tribe. She actually went back to the Huaorani started to preach about Jesus. Now, Diemna, she invited Rachel Saint, who was the sister of the murdered pilot of that original 5 missionary group, and Elizabeth Elliot, the widow of Jim Elliot, the man who was killed. And this pair of missionaries, they agreed to minister and try to spread the gospel to the Huron people. And they started out, they had an interesting method where they recorded the gospel on some records. They were like these little records that had about 3 minutes recording on each side of the record. Now, through their efforts, the Huron people started listening to the gospel. And there slowly, some of them became Christian. Now, the leader, Gita, he didn't really want to hear about it. He didn't really believe in the life that Jesus gives. He even said, "When I die, I will just become worms." But the thing is, in time, Gita started to believe in God. He'd even start praying to God before he went to go hunt in the jungle. Eventually, he became a Christian. And then, as a Christian, he decided to help raise the next generation, different from the violence that he was raised with, different from the ways that he had previously lived. He sought to raise a much more peaceful people. Now, in 1994, when Rachel Saint, the missionary who worked among the Huron, who was also known by that tribe as Bebe, she had passed away. And her nephew, Steve Saint, went to inform Gita about his aunt's passing. When Gita learned this, he said, "Bebe being old, I too am soon going to die. Going to live then in God's place. I will wrap my arms around your father, whom I speared first. Then we will live happily together." The great love of Jesus transforms. It transforms enemies into brothers. It transforms tribes and nations to live a better way, a much better way than the ways of this world that bring nothing but hatred and destruction and continual cycles of violence. The love of Jesus, that great love. It is a challenging thing, but we live it. We live it with power. And we know that, yes, we as bright shining lights, we as God's people of love, are blessed that when we do show that love. We are blessed because we live in his ways, know his ways, truly a people of love. Amen. And now I invite you